football, every game on the board podcast. This is the second section up, and we got Jeff from Oskiem Sports. Welcome in, buddy. How you feeling?
Pretty good, Drew. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited for your opinion here on the middle section here, guys. We're actually going 4-11, 4-12, Alabama versus Missouri, all the way down to 4-3-7, 4-3-8, Kentucky versus Auburn. So starting off with half of the Iron Bowl rivalry and ended it with the other half. So middle of the section here, Jeff. Interested in your opinion, starting off here with Alabama versus Missouri. That's number 2 ranked Alabama at the Missouri Tigers, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific kick here on ESPN. Big number, Alabama laying on the road near 4 touchdowns, seeing it 27.5 on the road, 56.5 being the total here, Jeff.
Yeah, Drew, if you like Missouri in this game, I would wait till closer to kickoff. I would not be surprised to see this line hit 28.5, 29 points before Saturday afternoon. I think this has blowout written all over it. If you look at Nick Saban, there's some really interesting angles. He missed the college football playoffs for the first time in 5 years after making it 5 consecutive appearances. And he lost 2 regular season games for the first time since 2010. The previous 2 times that Nick Saban lost 2 regular season games, the following year, they responded by winning back-to-back national titles. So Nick Saban is hyper-focused with this team. He just announced that Mac Jones is going to be the starter, which we pretty much knew. If you look at Mac Jones, what he did last year, after October 25th in 4 appearances, he posted the second highest QBR rating, 92.7 in the country behind Joe Burrow. So Alabama has excellent depth on both sides of the ball. And during this COVID-19 pandemic, if there's one team that's been decimated with COVID, that would be Missouri. As of this morning, they were going to be missing 12 players, but apparently they're only down to 7 that will be missing this game. The coach has not announced who it is because of healthcare privacy reasons. But Missouri is really hurting it with depth. You have 2 very good starters who opted out of the season during this pandemic, and they're down to 69 scholarship players. They lost 3 3-year stars on the offensive line. I think this Alabama defense wins the trenches on both sides of the ball. This has blowout all over it. I would lay the points with the Tide.
All right, good start here with Alabama versus Missouri. Second game up, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific time here. West Virginia at Oklahoma State. This one on ABC. We're seeing 51.5 being the total with Oklahoma State. The Cowboys laying 7 in Stillwater.
Yeah, Drew, Oklahoma State looked really bad last week against Tulsa, but the reason is their starting quarterback, Spencer Sanders, went out in the first quarter. I think the first series, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And he is out for this game. I've read reports that he's in a walking boot after that ankle injury. And both backups for Oklahoma State were absolutely pathetic. Ethan Bullock, who was 8 for 13 for 41 yards. But then Shane Illingworth, who was a third stringer, came in and actually sparked the Cowboys late in the third quarter into the fourth quarter and led them to a victory. But you are looking at an Oklahoma State team that's injured without their starting quarterback. I'm not sure what to expect, but Mike Gundy usually gets the most out of his quarterbacks. Is really a plug and play system he has there. So I really like Oklahoma State to bounce back with more of an offensive output here. If you look at West Virginia, they're very improved under second-year head coach Neil Brown. He went 4-8 in his first year at Troy before he rattled off 3 double-digit win seasons. So he's accustomed to winning. He knows how to win. He came into a very difficult situation with the Mountaineers, but in year 2, the players are familiar with the system, and they look very good against Eastern Kentucky in their opener. From a technical standpoint, if you look at it, West Virginia, they're 5-1 their last 6 with rest, and 4-1 against the spread off a win by 21 or more points. And I think, what was the market, Drew? You said that the line is...
Well, I mean, it opened 8.5, and it's, Pinnacle showing 6.5, but most books showing 7. So we've obviously seen some money, some influence here for the West Virginia side.
Yeah, Pinnacle's showing, that's amazing. Pinnacle's showing 6.5. That means the Sharps, obviously, since Pinnacle's a sharp book, I think the Sharps are really liking the road underdog here. I do like West Virginia here in this spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. Especially, Spencer Sanders, if he's out in the walking boot, like you said, that's a big loss. I think he's a top quality quarterback there, Jeff.
Oh, I agree. It's a huge loss, and it shuts down Oklahoma State's ground game as well. Because I think what Hubbard had 3.1 or 3.2 yards per carry last week once Spencer went out. So I think Oklahoma State's going to struggle to move the chains early on in this game until Illingworth gets his feet under him and feels more comfortable in the system.
Mm-hmm. And guys, if you're just putting a name with a face here, this is Jeff from WagerTalk.com. And Jeff, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Oskiem Sports, at Oskiem Sports on Twitter.
Okay, Oskiem Sports, and he's been doing a lot here, guys, in college football. He's got his 5% college football Big 12 game of the month up at WagerTalk.com. He's 67% football run now, so he's seeing it well, and also 11-3 with his 5% since 2017. Something I like about that stat, Jeff, not only 11-3, just the percentage win there, it's 11-3 since 2017. So you're not throwing out a high volume there. It's you're picking your spots here and you're doing very well.
Yeah, very selective with my 5% plays at WagerTalk. I have a really strict criteria and a methodology that I follow. And like you said, I've had 14 since 2007. I bet 2017, I'm 11-3. That's 79%. I love this game on Saturday afternoon. You can find it at WagerTalk.com. Definitely check it out. My Big 12 conference game of the month.
Yeah, check them out. WagerTalk.com under Oskiem Sports, the handicapper page there. Heading back to the SEC. Next game up here, Jeff. 4:19, 4:20, 12 noon Eastern kick here. We got the Florida Gators at the Ole Miss Rebels, 57 being the total. We're seeing another away favorite here in the SEC laying doubles, talking about the Florida Gators laying 2 touchdowns in Oxford.
Yeah, I really like this Florida team this year. If you look at the COVID-19 pandemic, if there's one thing that's more important than anything else this college football season, and really it extends into the NFL, would be continuity and stability in the program. Dan Mullen for Florida enters his 3rd season. He has his entire coaching staff that returns. That's very important. A lot of teams have new offensive and defensive coordinators, new coaches coming in, no spring practices. This Florida team is well adjusted. Same system on both sides of the ball, same coordinators, same coach. This is the most balanced team that Dan Mullen has had in his tenure in Florida, in Gainesville. They have one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the country, with 8 returning starters. They recorded almost 50 sacks last year up front, the front 7. I think they're going to have a field day against Mississippi. Lane Kiffin, the Lane Kiffin era. Can you believe this, Drew? Lane Kiffin goes from Florida Atlantic. Now he's in Mississippi. He parlays his success in Florida Atlantic, and he lands back in the SEC. But, I mean, Kiffin, if you look at him, he has really modernized offenses during his professional career. He went to USC, modernized that system, and then he went to Florida Atlantic, and he really had a potent offense there. So I think Lane Kiffin is an underrated coach. He took over a 3-9 Florida Atlantic squad, and he went 11-3 in his first season. So he's accustomed to making improvements immediately, and I think we'll see a much improved Mississippi Rebel team this year. But I think this is a very difficult spot. Their defense is their biggest question mark. They lack depth, and their best 4 defensive linemen are gone. I think Florida is definitely the look here. Although if you get 14.5, if it gets over 14.5, I would buy on Mississippi.
Yeah, Jeff, I mean, you bring up Lane Kiffin. He's kind of, he brings a lot of fanfare with him. It seems like everybody's got an opinion on him from, the Joey Freshwater era down to Boca Raton. One thing I always remember about handicapping FAU is I would watch their coaching show, and Lane Kiffin, he's getting paid $1 million a year to live in Boca Raton, and he would take his boat to the coaching show at a restaurant there in Boca. And I was like, he's making $1 million a year there. He's never going to leave down there because he was having some success. And sure enough, he does leave because I'm guessing he wanted to, get to a bigger name, whatever the case may be. Finds himself in Ole Miss in the middle of the SEC West. That's a tough ask to kind of get better there. But, it's almost, the new system here for Ole Miss. 2 good quarterbacks, by the way, I will say. But it's a new system. I want to see him play here. It's just across the board in the SEC, Jeff, and we'll talk about a couple more here. We already talked about one. It's teams laying big spreads on the road in the SEC. This is more than I've ever seen in my handicapping career here. It almost makes me look towards the dogs just as a whole. But like you talked about, I mean, the Gators defense, offensively, Thrash at the quarterback position was great last year.
Yeah.
It's tough to be on the underdog in this situation.
It is, and you throw in the COVID situation, you have teams with new coaches, new coordinators on both sides of the ball, like Mississippi, no spring practices. And I found a couple of nuggets I wanted to share with the viewers. If you look at this season alone, first-year head coaches like Lane Kiffin are 5-10 against the spread. They failed to cover the spread by 6.7 points per game. And if you compare them to the opening number in those games, they're 3-12 against the spread. So that's something to take a look at and follow throughout the season to see how first-year head coaches are faring in their rookie season. Right now, they're 5-10 against the spread, and I think it's a real good go against as a general rule because of COVID and no spring practices, lack of continuity with the players and the coaches. So that's one thing to take a look at. And then if you look at spring practices, which are really important, only a handful of schools had the full 17 spring practices, and the vast majority didn't get any spring practices. But if you take the college football teams that have 5 or more spring practices than their opponent this season, they are 6-2 against the spread. So that's also something to consider. So I think continuity, plus you have spring practice, which is critical for first-year coaches especially. So those are 2 things to follow throughout the season.
Yeah, the spring practices one is great. Ralph Michaels bring that up all the time. And in the stats, you said 3-12 ATS against the opening line and 5-10 against the spread in the closing line. And that was first-year head coaches this year?
This year, yeah.
Man, good stats there, Jeff. So maybe bringing that into the SEC kicking off now. So that might add on here. We'll have to find out. We got 421, 422 up next, Jeff. Georgia Southern, Louisiana Lafayette. 2 big hitters here in the Sun Belt. Well, at least Louisiana Lafayette is. They are having to lay 2 touchdowns here in Lafayette, minus 13.5, pretty much across the board, with 53 being the total.
Yeah, Georgia Southern is, I always refer to them as the poster child of the COVID-19 era, because 2 weeks ago against Campbell, was it last week or 2 weeks ago against Campbell, an FCS school, they were missing 33 players. And I think at least 7 of those 33 players were starters. Georgia Southern eked out a win 27-26. They beat Campbell. And actually, Campbell went for 2 to win the game outright in the final play of the game, and Georgia Southern stopped them, so they got the win. I'm actually pretty bullish on this Georgia Southern team this year entering the season, but the COVID situation is so unknown. I looked at their depth chart, and it's impossible to tell who is going to play and who is not going to play. You go to the Don Best screen, and it's just questionable all the way down the board for all these, like at least 25 players. It's just, you won't know until kickoff. And then I don't want to have action on the game if I don't know until kickoff what's happening with the team. I look at my math model. It likes the Raging Cajuns by 15.6 points per game in this game. They're off to a great start, 2-0. They almost got upset last week off of their upset at Iowa State. They went to Georgia State, and that was a classic letdown spot for the Raging Cajuns, and they nearly lost to Georgia State. I was reading some press clippings and some newspapers in Louisiana, and Coach Napier was saying that his team has had the best week of practice they've had since the season started. So I think you're going to have a very focused Louisiana Lafayette team at home against Georgia Southern. If I had to play this game, I would lay the number just because of the unknowns with Georgia Southern's health with the players.
All right, good stuff so far, Jeff. We'll keep it rolling here in the Big 12, 423, 424, Kansas State at Oklahoma. We're seeing the Sooners laying 28, 4 touchdowns at home, 60.5 being the total in this Big 12 matchup.
Yeah, Joe, with this one, everyone's kind of circling the fact that Kansas State upset Oklahoma last year, 48-41 as 23.5-point underdogs, and then they're really going to be screwed this week going to Oklahoma because the Sooners are going to be out for revenge, and they're going to be furious about that. But if you look at the 2 other previous instances where Oklahoma was upset, the following year they had revenge situations. They failed to cover the spread in those 2 as well. So the revenge angle, which is always overplayed within sports to begin with, I think you probably agree with that, is just completely overplayed. And you're paying a premium as well with the point spread. The point spread is grossly inflated in this game, and you have one of the best coaches, I believe, at Kansas State, Bill Snyder, the living legend that he was, steps down, and they bring in the North Dakota State guy, coach. Is it Kleiman?
Yes.
Yeah, Chris Kleiman. I mean, he really overachieved last year at 8-5. Kansas State is one of the best underdogs over the years on the road. I really like this Kansas State team to bounce back. They haven't looked good so far this year, but they're 18-5 against the spread as a conference underdog over the last 4 years. They've had a bye to work things out, but there are issues with COVID again with Kansas State. They've had some of their practices disrupted because of it. I don't think any starters are going to be missing on Saturday, but again, that's unknown until kickoff, most likely. I haven't read anything that people are sitting out, but again, it's a concern of mine. I'm staying away from this game, but if I had to take a side, I would definitely grab the boatload of points with the Kansas State team.
He's Jeff from Oskiem Sports. Follow him on Twitter at Oskiem Sports. Also, check out his work, WagerTalk.com. He's got his 5% college football Big 12 game of the month up. He's 11-3 with his 5% since 2017. So low volume there, but he's got one up this weekend. Check it out, WagerTalk.com. Interested in your opinion on this one, Jeff. This is one I got circled. 4 o'clock Eastern kick here, 1 o'clock Pacific on the SEC network. The number 4 ranked Georgia Bulldogs in Fayetteville, Arkansas against the Arkansas Razorbacks, 52.5 being the total. We're seeing Georgia laying 26.5 on the road. Yeah,
so Arkansas has a new coach in Sam Pittman. And the interesting tidbit in this game is that Sam Pittman, who is the new head coach for Arkansas, the past 4 years was the offensive line coach for Georgia. So if there's anyone who knows the personnel on the Georgia side, it would be Arkansas's new coach, Sam Pittman. So that gives them a slight edge in this game in terms of knowing the personnel and the dynamics in the locker room over in Georgia. Outside of that, though, there's nothing else really going for Arkansas. The Razorbacks, they've lost 19 straight SEC games. And the last time they've won an SEC opener was 2010. And again, this is a new head coach and Sam Pittman. They've had no spring practices and a complete lack of continuity going into this game. And I know they're at home hosting Georgia, but there's no home field advantage here because of COVID. Plus, Georgia, they're 5-1 against the spread as conference road favorites of 16 or more points. If you look at how conference road favorites of 16 or more points have performed over the years, they're actually I see that they were actually 10-4 against the spread in season opening games. So I wouldn't be concerned about laying the number in this game, even though Pittman does have some knowledge on the Bulldogs. I do like Georgia in this game. I don't see how Arkansas scores points, to be candid, against this Georgia front seven. I like the Bulldogs, if anything, in this game.
And Jeff, the stat you said there, the SEC, was it double-digit road favorites, a winning percentage? Was that only in the openers, though?
Yeah, it's conference road favorites of 20 or more points. They're 10-4 against the spread in season opening games.
Okay, interesting there. Yeah. I mean, and you brought up, the offensive line coach Pittman now being the head coach for Arkansas. One thing that what I would bring into this handicap is it's 26 points on the road in Fayetteville in his first game as the head coach for Arkansas. Obviously, if you work for him for 4 years, they're buddies to some sort of a degree here. I don't know if he's going to look to run it up on him, though.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. That's true. And if you look at Georgia, they may have a slight look ahead in this game. They have Auburn on deck. And Georgia, they're 7-13 against the spread as favorites of more than 20 points. So that's a concern with the Georgia side. But you're right. I don't know what the relationship is with Pittman and with Kirby Smart, but I would be hesitant. I think that's a very good point, Drew. That's very good.
We got Big 12 up next here, Jeff. Texas at Texas Tech. We're seeing 18.5 for the Longhorns on the road here, 71 being the total in West Texas, Jeff.
Yeah, this Texas team, I think I'm very bullish on the Longhorns this year. You have the only issue is they have new coordinators on both sides of the ball, and Mike Yurcich and Chris Ash. I think they're significant upgrades from what they had before. I think the Longhorns are going to benefit from that on both sides of the ball. The secondary for Texas, which is going to come and play against Texas Tech on Saturday, the Texas secondary is vastly improved this year. They have I think they have 13 players back who had 70 or more snaps last season. So they go from last year as being one of the least experienced secondaries in the nation to this year being one of the most experienced secondaries in the nation. And I think Herman is feeling that the chatter a little bit. They expect a little bit more from Texas. And I think this is a statement game for the Longhorns. And my math model looked at that. My math model likes Texas by 19.6 points. So I guess the line is relatively fair in this game. Texas Tech, they reported no positive COVID-19 tests conducted last week, which is a benefit. But can you believe, Drew, college kids, you remember, back in the day when we were in college, we were, invincible, nothing. We just lacked foresight, let's put it that way. Made some bad judgments. Sure. The starting running back for Texas Tech, Sir Roderick Thompson, you know what happened to him? He was charged this week with street racing. Street racing. He's bailed out. And what does the program say? They come out and say he's going to play and start on Saturday. It's unbelievable. I mean, whatever happened to accountability? But anyway, so I think there's been distractions with the Red Raiders. I think Texas is the play in this game. If you play it, I don't personally have a play in the game, but if you're going to play this game, I would recommend the Longhorns under the circumstances.
Guess that's what happens when you got Texas coming into town. You need your best players out there. But
right.
Yeah, street racing, that's one that's a little tough to get over. And guys, we got staying in the Big 12 here. We got Iowa State at TCU. And speaking of Jeff's record here, 11-3 on his 5% since 2017, low volume and high winning percentage. And actually, it does involve Iowa State versus TCU here in this matchup in the Big 12. So for Jeff's analysis on this one, check it out, WagerTalk.com. It's also including his 3-day, 7-day, full season there for college football at WagerTalk. That's Iowa State versus TCU. Next game up, we got 4-3-3, 4-3-4 in the SEC here, Jeff. 3:30 Eastern kick here. This game on CBS. So the main game, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Mississippi State at LSU. LSU, an interesting case study in themselves, just rebounding from all the talent that they lost. They set a record in the NFL draft with 14 or tied a record. 14 players drafted here, Jeff. Now having to lay 16.5 or 17 in the Bayou, 57.5 being the total here.
So, Drew, I think, are you playing for LSU on Saturday? Are you starting or are you backing up? Because they're down 19 starters from last year's team. They've had some significant opt-outs during the last month or so. If you look at what they've lost, they're down 4 offensive line starters, 6 of their top defensive linemen, 4 of their top 5 linebackers, 3 of their top 5 defensive backs. And they, like I said, they lost a slew of players to opt-outs. And they lost their offensive coordinator, and Joe Brady, who went to the NFL. And I think this is a difficult situation for LSU, but I think it's also overblown. The depth and the talent and the skill level at this program from recruiting over the years and being in the SEC, I think a lot of the backups and third stringers for LSU are better than a lot of the starters and second string players for many of the teams in the SEC, and certainly out of conference for sure. So I wouldn't get too carried away here with the missing players from last year. Now, Mississippi State. I'm curious, what is your opinion on Mike Leach?
I mean, his press conferences are second to none. They're awesome.
They're the best.
Just YouTube Mike Leach press conferences, and you will enjoy yourself for the next couple minutes, if not hours. Overall, my view on Mike Leach is, as a football coach, recruiting-wise, I have my question marks, but offensively, I think he's great. And plus the fact, KJ Costello is going to be his quarterback. You'd like to think a high IQ coming from Stanford, and Mike Leach's playbook, from everything I've read and heard people talk about, is fairly easy to understand. There's not that many different plays in it. So in terms of quarterbacks learning new systems, I think this is actually going to be an easier transition than most out there, Jeff. Now, and also, talking about catching big numbers against a team that is losing a lot in LSU, I'll tell you what, in this matchup, it's the dog or pass for me, Jeff.
Interesting. Again, we have a new head coach, new coordinators on both sides of the ball. So you're dealing with lack of continuity. They had Mississippi State's one of a number of most schools who did not have any spring practices. But Mike Leach has always said for years that his offensive system takes 3 days to learn. It's a plug and play system. And he is going to be, I think they're going to be ready to play. I think it's true. If you look at what he's done at Washington State over the years, he could plug in any quarterback. Freshman, sophomore, first year, whatever it may be, and they performed exceptionally well for him with the system. So I don't think he's kidding when he says it takes 3 days to learn the offensive playbook. Now, the interesting thing here is on the defensive side of the ball, they bring in a San Diego State disciple for the defensive coordinator position. So they're going to be playing the 3-3-5. Is that what it is? The 3-3-5 that San Diego State and Rocky Long used to play for the Aztecs. So that's something that the SEC has never seen before. So that's going to be a new look on the defensive side of the ball for a lot of these teams. And that could be an adjustment in this game. It could take LSU a little while to get used to that.
Yeah, and we're seeing a low total here, 46, 45.5
Yeah.
even, which, modern day college football, or excuse me, no, that's the wrong line I'm reading here, 57.5.
Yeah.
I was going to say my numbers would be way off on that one. But no, about this game, I mean, I would be on the dog here, but it sounds like you might differ.
My math model likes LSU and is taking into account all of the losses they've had on both sides of the ball. So I'm going to stay away from this game, but if I had to play it, I would lay the number with LSU. I think they have a lot to prove, and I think they've heard for many weeks how there's no one left, the cupboard's empty, and they have no chance. Don't get me wrong, I've downgraded them more than any other team this offseason from a power rating standpoint. There's no question about it. But despite that, I still think LSU, and the line is right at 16.5 right now. I think that's the right number. I'm going to stay away from this. If anything, I would lay the points.
Okay, and next game up here, talking about that 45.5 or 46 point total here. It's Vanderbilt at Texas A&M. Another large spread here in the SEC. The low total, like we said, and this is Texas A&M laying 30.5 in College Station, hosting Vanderbilt here, Jeff.
Yeah, this Vanderbilt team, I'm not sure what to say. They have 4 new quarterbacks, no experience in college. They haven't thrown a pass, and they haven't even named a starter yet. Mason hasn't even named a starter for this game. Vanderbilt has only 5 returning starters on offense, and quarterback is not one of them, unfortunately. They only have they lost their top running back, their top wide receiver, and they've had a plethora of opt-outs over the last few weeks that has completely killed their depth. The only saving grace for Vanderbilt this year will be their defense with 10 returning starters. This will be actually one of the best defenses, not only in the SEC, but in the country. I have it rated in the top 30 stop units entering this game. Now, you look at Texas A&M, I think they're going to be able to move the ball. Jimbo Fisher is really facing the music here. He's entering his 4th year. He's had a combined 15 losses in his first 3 years in College Station, and I think the boosters are getting fed up with it. They need some results, and they want them now. I think he's aware of that. And Texas A&M is 30-2 straight up and 15-6-1 in home openers since 1988. And I think if you're going to do anything here, you're going to lay the points. The only concern I have is the look-ahead situation. I believe, Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Texas A&M has Alabama on deck. So the concern is the look ahead plus Texas A&M may have a very vanilla offense. They may not want to show a lot of their playbook in this game against Vanderbilt because it's going to be it's not going to be a competitive game whatsoever. So I would be concerned about covering the 30 points if that is the case. I'm almost positive they have Alabama on deck, and they're not going to want to show Saban any film on plays they're going to be running.
Yeah, that makes total sense, having to cover more than 4 touchdowns here.
Yeah.
At 30.5 being the price tag on this one. Guys, we got one game left in this segment. If you're listening on the podcast, we're going to bring Robbie Vino in to finish off the college football every game on the board podcast each and every week here throughout the football season, both college football and the NFL. And if you like watching it video style, make sure to check out the WagerTalk YouTube channel. It is simulcast there each and every week as well. Check out Jeff's top play top rated play, 5% college football, Big 12 game of the month. He's on a 67% football run here, 11-3 with his 5% plays, which is the top rating play you can have at WagerTalk. He's not throwing them out all the time either. 11-3 since 2017. So check him out there, WagerTalk.com. Last game up here, 12 noon Eastern kick here. Kentucky versus Auburn, Jeff. This one on the SEC network. We got 50 being the total, with the War Eagles laying 7 in the hook and Jordan Hare.
Yeah, this is going to be the game of the weekend, in my opinion. I'm very interested in seeing this Kentucky team. I'm again, like a handful of other teams, I'm very bullish on the Wildcats this year. You look at what Mark Stoops has done with this Kentucky squad. He actually cracked the top 25 this past year in recruiting for the first time in program history. I mean, this Kentucky team under Stoops has gradually gotten better, and better, and they're getting better and better recruits along with it. They're very capable of winning the trenches on the offensive side of the ball. They have 4 returning starters and 89 career starts. So I think they're going to be able to move the ball against this Auburn defense, which is very important. And they also have one of the best secondaries in the country, if not the best. And that they're going to make life very difficult for sophomore quarterback Bo Nix for Auburn. I mean, Bo Nix started last year as a freshman for Auburn. He won 9 games, but all 5 of his offensive linemen are gone. They've had no spring practice, so they have 0 continuity along the offensive line. You have a sophomore quarterback who I am still trying to figure out if he's the real deal or if he needs some more experience. I don't know if you have an opinion on Bo Nix, but I'm not sold on him yet.
No, I'm not either. I don't think he's proved himself at all. I mean, you bring up the fact, the win total last year, but don't forget, Jeff. I mean, and I know you probably didn't, in the first 40 some odd picks of the NFL draft, that was both of Auburn's defensive tackles being selected there, and they're both gone off of the defensive line now. Yeah. So they lose 2 big boys up front that were game changers last year. I mean, when Auburn was going up against any of the big boys and pushing them around, giving LSU, they played within 3 points of LSU last year, the national champs, not because of Bo Nix by any means. It was because of the defense keeping them in the game, and how much of that is going to be lost, I'm not sure. Going up against Kentucky, and say what you want about Kentucky, not being up to Auburn standards, which this year you made a great point on their recruiting rankings. They're definitely making a push here. And how many SEC teams, Jeff, would win 8 games in the SEC conference with a wide receiver playing quarterback? Right. I'm not so sure. And Kentucky did that last year. This is a talented team. I mean, it would be the dog or pass for me, Jeff.
I agree. If you look at the last 3 meetings between these teams, they've been decided by combined 13 points. So it's a competitive series. I do like Kentucky plus the points. It's 7.5. Is that what you said now?
Yeah, and it's been bought down here. I mean, it
opened at 10. Yeah, opened at 10. It's down to 7.5. I still like it at 7.5 with Kentucky. I think that's the play here. I really like what Mark Stoops has done with the program. Take the dog or leave it alone.
All right, great stuff from Jeff here. Jeff, you want to leave him with a best bet at all? Anything you're looking at, or throw out anything in conclusion as far as what you got going on at WagerTalk on Twitter? Anything?
Yeah, outside of my 5% with the Big 12 game of the month, TCU. That game with TCU, I would say I like South Carolina plus the points. I think you get a field goal plus the hook, 3.5 right now with South Carolina. I do like the Gamecocks in that game. My math model only favors Tennessee by 0.66. So the value is with the home underdog. Take the Gamecocks plus 3.5 as my underdog special.
I like that. I like the South Carolina side as well. And you talk about continuity. That's an interesting subject in itself with South Carolina, because it's the quarterback in the coach from Colorado State now being the offensive coordinator and quarterback. So it's not really a new system.
Right, not a new system, and they just announced that the Colorado State transfer is going to be the quarterback, like you said, and with his head coach from the Rams. So I do like South Carolina in this game a lot.
All right, Jeff. And guys, follow him on Twitter at Oskiem Sports. Check out his 5% play, WagerTalk.com. Go to his handicapper page there, 11-3 on his 5% since 2017. So, Jeff, thanks for the time, man. Good stuff, and we'll talk next week. Best of luck, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Drew. Take care.